7. Look, we were adjourned for an hour there while we took care of some council business, so we'll open the meeting. We've got one apology, and that's from Councillor Herman Vorster. He's to head back to some business in his office, so I'm happy to move that.
Can I second that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Should we vote on it? Let's vote on it.
All those in favour?
Already checking out committee work.
That's it. Thank
I
you.
think he's off to talk to Mark Bailey about
That's
something.
carried. Councillors, there's no leave of absence. If we could, unless anyone's got any concerns with the minutes, we'll star those at 3. Is there any conflict of interest declarations? I haven't received any prior to the meeting. No, none there.
We need a seconder to resume the meeting.
Sorry, we need a seconder to resume the meeting. So, yeah. Councillor Owen-Jones. All those in favour of resuming. That's it. We're in. All those in favour. That's carried. We've got two starred items, 5.1 and 7.1. Did we want to unstar either of those? No, we'll leave those starred. Did we want to star any other items on the agenda, councillors? No, that's good. All right, so if I could have somebody to move 3, 5.1 and 7.1. That's moved by Councillor Peter Young and seconded by Councillor Owen-Jones. All those in favour? That is carried. And we will go to item 6.1, which is our pathway safety study update.
Through the chair, coming in, we actually have some of our transport team. I'm going to embarrass her. We do have the IPWEA Women in Engineering of the Year coming in, Renee, who is also acting transport operations from tomorrow. Female engineer is Renee Wise. So we might get you guys just to sit up here, and Deepa, if you're going to come up to present. So this is a follow-on, obviously. We've spoken to council a few times now about what we can do in the pathway space. We know that it is an issue. We know that there is a concern across the whole of the city. So today was really about providing an update on the trials that we have been doing, and ultimately about some of those next steps in what the city is responsible for and how we can work with other state agencies to provide safety on our pathways.
Thank you, Director. Through Madam Chair. Good afternoon. This one here? Don't fall down. It's on. It's on. Okay. Training wheels on. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, Director, fellow councillors. Good afternoon. So the presentation I have is in the report. It's about the pathway safety study, the conflict study that has gone on for quite a while. And my task here is to very quickly present the findings and the summaries from that, what we've learned and what we're doing and how we're tackling the issues. As you probably know, over the last, I don't know, two and a half years, the impact of PMDs and other road users on our pathways, particularly the Ocean Way, has increased for various reasons. And there's, of course, been identified conflicts with the volumes, the higher volumes of PMDs. PMDs are personal mobility devices, include skateboards, segways, e-bikes, bikes, anything with one wheel or two wheels. And it causes grief for all sorts of people because of just the nature of it. How do I go to the next slide? Oh, here we go. So basically, a quick overview of the pathway study. So you can see that in July 21 was the inception of the project, which basically did a current state analysis. So the current state analysis was finding out what is there, what are the issues, where are the issues, things like conflict, people turning around, near misses, the pathways are too narrow, those sorts of things. So they were from customer complaints and complaints from yourselves that came into our area. A few months later, in October 21, a trial commenced with some very low-cost treatments, and these trials were essentially what you would have seen on the coast along the Ocean Way. So there were lines and signs, the little center wavy lines that we've put in. There were some modified speed awareness devices that were used for high activity areas. So when you came into a movement into a place area, they sort of slowed you down or gave a message saying high activity area, slow down, those sorts of things. Somewhere this time last year, there was a massive change in the legislative reforms, which was phase 1B, and that was the introduction of the early part of the road rules, which November 1st, 2022 was the introduction of actual road rules, what defined PMDs, what defined electric bikes, and how they should operate on a particular section of roadway. And there's some rules and some regulations that came in that was under the TORUM Act, the Transport Operations Act. Later on, July, around the same time, a lot of education commenced as well. That really ramped up after November last year. And that was the education around safety, the communications that the state did. Council did a fair bit of communications as well through Facebook and social media. And there was a release of the business cards. I think most of you have them in your offices now. There were little QR codes in the back and says, do you know your road rules? And a whole lot of rules for riders. So that's pamphlets like that. They were online as well. It has doesn't have demerit points, but it has the actual penalties on them. So I don't think that has been shared very well, but it's something that's sort of happening more and more and more. And then, of course, we are now in the state of finding those outcomes. And today here I am presenting this outcomes of the trial. And the whole idea is now it's just about delivery and finding what we've learned. So the current state analysis included interrogation of all the crash data, camera footage of observed incidents. So we had CCTVs, and some of them were smart CCTVs that identified potential conflicts. It was interesting that 60% of all the interactions, and there was about 420 observed incidents, 60% were attributed to pedestrian inattention. Someone's walking along the road and a bike's coming, and they suddenly turn around on the path of an oncoming bike. Unintentional, but it's an incident. People get affected by it. 21%, or a fifth, were cyclists failing to keep left, which is a bit of an issue. And just under 20% were just statistically insignificant factors that affected. There were things like drop-offs or rutting on the pathways and things like that. Now, customer complaints, we received about 40 at that time. Mostly they were focused around Main Beach, Surfers, Coolangatta, Broad Beach, and bit in Labrador. Labrador was sort of split between Broadwater Parklands area up to probably Lanes End, and then you had the Spit area as well. So there was a bit of a split in that area, but that was the main concentration. The principal concern was speed, obviously. That was the big thing. About 60% was speeding by cyclists, and about just over 30% was speeding by personal mobility scooters. So later on, I'll present some data we've got from Queensland Police. So this is the reported crashes on the Ocean Way, which runs from Kira Beach to the Spit. Now, funnily enough, there were only 2 reported injury crashes during that period of 5 years. So we know there's a lot of incidents that do occur, but a lot of them aren't reported. So following the theme of the report in front of you, we had a 3-pronged approach to pathway safety. So engineering, the 3 E's: engineering, education, and enforcement. The main issue was speeding. It was probably a bit of a perception, but we had data on that. Failing to keep left, failing to announce yourself, ringing a bell as you are now coming into a group of people. Also abusive and unruly and rude riders, PMD and cyclists, and often case of path just not wide enough. A heavily used facility that we have and just not used enough. Our observation was, through watching the videos, was I think where the older users are more startled is it's a speed differential. You know, you're walking at that pace and this bike zooming past, not ringing a bell, and you just get startled. It's just nature. Some of the identified speeds were well above the average speed of 12, 15. They were well above that and, you know, into the good range. There's also, I think we identified a lack of knowledge of road rules, generally, just non-compliance, not keeping left, not stopping, not giving way to pedestrians, those sorts of things. The non-acceptance of I think another problem was the non-acceptance of a high increase in PMD usage. Everyone, especially on the coast, it's all, you either hired it from a mum and dad company or you owned one. We don't have hired schemes, so we had that ownership and people got to know their PMD devices and they rode them well, they rode them fast. The other big thing was a mix of pets and pedestrians on a pathway. So, you know, you got your little pet running along a lead and a cyclist has come in and cleaned everyone out. And the other one major thing was turning conflicts, particularly at interface points like surf club, access to the beach, car parks, those sorts of things. That was a big issue for us. So with the engineering type of treatments, you can see we used, we broke the ocean way down into two sorts of areas. So the movement was the north-south movement, and the places were the east-west movement. So places would have been like shopping centres, car parks, surf clubs, coffee shops, beach access, places where the side roads, like Labrador, they're coming and joining into the movement, the north-south direction. So we used, for the movements, we used symbolic signs and pavement symbols. So the keep left signs, keep left when approaching and all those sorts of signs were used, plus with pavement symbols. So they had the center lines and they had you would have noticed the PMD, the bike, the person, and an arrow. And it's on the left-hand side. Now, we found that was quite effective. For the place areas, we use the green threshold approaches. So when you're approaching a park, Broadbeach is a good example, and maybe where the aquatic centre is at Southport. We used a mixture of those green thresholds, and they were laterally marked at 50 metres, 25 metres, 0 metres. It gave a bit of an approach. But it also, before that approach, we used the high activity signs which said caution. So depending on what speed it read, it gave you a particular message, either in amber or red. Don't think too many people adhere to that because your eyes are on the ground, not looking up at the sky. So we learned from that. And there were good trials. And the locations of those trials, generally, that's what they looked like with the man, the bike, and the electric PMD. So Marine Parade, Seawall Drive, Phillip Park, Rembrandt Park, and up at Broadbeach where we trialed this. The other place we trialed that very successfully was behind the Sheraton area, and that's the area we've been working. It's a hilly terrain, undulating, visibility is not good, so it's a good area to push this. We also, for the movement sections, we use those signs. So this is the top ones. Both of them are just north of Main Beach. And we use that at Paradise Point Parklands up the north, up near the Esplanade, and at Rotary Park at Burleigh. So it was finding the right locations for them, but I think they have their purpose as well. The other trials for place was the green thresholds, as I said before. Plus, it's accompanied with a high activity sign, so that covers it legally, saying it's that. And we had 3 locations up at near the Tugun Surf Lifesaving Club, North Burleigh Club near Ed Hardy Park, and just north of the Southport Park. One of the Southport Surf Club. One of the standouts was for achieving the safety improvement in all the studies, and this is after a lot of maths and analysis. Was basically we probably need to separate our parts into sections so they perform the functions they are meant to do. So, what is a place is should be designed as a place, and with parts to separate the commuter PMD users or the recreational users, plus separating the walkers, the pedestrians. So that is the fundamental sort of thing. The other interesting area was, and we continued in Nicarawa Park, the Broadwater Parklands, and up at Balinga. And we have just changed the signs in preparation for Christmas and Coolies, where it reads a different message. It says travel slowly, and there are 3 settings on that. So we're just rolling them out as we speak. The other thing we learned was maybe an entry statement, so that while we had our green thresholds, maybe an entry statement saying you're coming into Broadbeach, you're coming to Balinga Park area, whatever that was. Now, as part of that whole approach was, and it was something that you, the councillors, had asked us a while back, and I believe might have been the May meeting, was to develop a pathway toolkit and also develop a local area traffic management toolkit, which Kath, my colleague, will talk about that a bit later on in the next presentation after me. But basically the toolkit was to provide you with some very good information with all the engineering devices we use. So we've got the electronic devices, the behavioral signs and symbols, the pavement markers, how they're going. So it's not it gives you an idea to be informed. So when you're talking to your residents or talking to the people, you can say, look, these are the treatments available and this is what we could do. There still needs to be some engineering judgment around all of that, because you just can't plonk them in every spot. So there's a bit of thought process that needs to go in that. Now the big thing is education. So as I said, TMR have been rolling them out through YouTube, Facebook, Schoolies, Mediums, through the schools. They've been going out through the social media, TikTok, you name it. It's all over there with the younger generation. Our older generation is probably not picking that information up, but the whole idea is part of that education. We are partnering with Councillor Young, middle of December, to do a pop-up. It's the first of our pop-ups we're trying to do, and the whole idea is to work with police, with our local law, TMR.
So she's going to pop up and TikTok, or just pop up?
She's just going to pop and appear. And now the whole idea is wherever we do them is to engage yourselves into that. So, the next one at Surface or Broadbeach or Broadwater Parklands, that's my intention anyway, is to get out there, and get you out there, get you on board with us to understand what we do, and vice versa. So the state media campaign has been ongoing. We've been pushing, our media team's been pushing that. All the flyers that I've said. Now we've also visited, over a period of the last month and a half, I think it is, a number of us visited a number of PMD hire operators, and we've had a bit of a chat with them about how they operate, the safety requirements, are they doing the right thing, and we've seen some things that we shouldn't have seen, and we've passed it on. And the other thing is that, as you probably know, my team has a couple of those VMS signs. So other than using for road safety or for rural road safety, we're using some of them now for the PMD messaging, which will be across the road network. So we will do, for example, for schoolies, we'll have some road safety schoolies, the Christmas campaign road safety messaging, but that last week of that messaging would be a PMD message. So while it's out there for 3 weeks on a rotation, 2 weeks of road safety and 1 week of PMD messaging. So I think we hit bang for buck on that. The city website contains a lot of information on that as well. And the next interesting thing is enforcement. So at the last time when I presented the road safety update plan, one of the actions out of that was to for the mayor, for us to write to the Premier and the Minister of Transport and Main Roads and Minister of Police to request some assistance and enforcement for PMDs, which they've been doing a lot in Brisbane, but really nothing down the coast. So we've done that and got responses from the Premier and Minister Ryan and Minister Bailey, and it's been very positive. And just very quickly as a summary, the last 4 or 5 weeks have been spent with Queensland Police doing the training on how to conduct enforcement. Now the highway patrol guys, police would be doing the enforcement on the roads and high arterial, high order roads. You can't expect them to come down on the Ocean Way and clicking someone who's doing 15 kilometers an hour. So what they did was recalibrated their LiDAR equipment and trained the local general duties police. And they're based out of Surface and Broadbeach, and they have commenced training. So it's 3 weeks of fairly intensive training. We've been involved with them with providing hotspots and a couple of other things. and they've, whether they were out last weekend, I'm not very sure, but they're starting to roll that out definitely with the GC 500 on and with schoolies coming around the corner. They would have done that. So they're starting to enforce that. And I understand Majrubal Police, Robina Police, and Nerang officers have been trained in that as well. And it's in your area as well, in Coomera, northern areas as well. So just some quick figures now. This has been provided by Queensland Police. So you could see the purple is when the new road rules were introduced in November 2022. The level of infringements that were given. So this is mostly in the Brisbane area along Goodwill Bridge and that area there, and some in Townsville and some in Rockhampton. They're the areas where they had the hired scheme. So that's how they targeted that area. You could see in the teal colors, they've really ramped up and they're fairly consistent with their with the infringements, how they're issuing that. Now in October this year, the new road rules came in with having to assist somebody on the road if there was an incident rather than driving off, and the demerit points went up again. So this was an interesting bit of data. The next one was the infringement types. So no helmet was the biggest concern. You could see riding on a prohibited road. So if they're riding a PMD on a road that has a centre line mark, that's a prohibited road. That's those sorts of things. Speeding more than 30 kilometers an hour above the speed limit. There's a couple of them. It's a bit hard to target them because one of the things they've said is, police have said is a lot of them don't have any ID. They're under the age of 18, so they don't have ID. So really, technically, under the Queensland legislation, you can't issue them a fine. You can just have a verbal warning, and that's that. So that has to change over time. And you can see some red light infringements, a number of passenger carrying infringements, and some minor things. Drink driving and drug driving is another one, another little thing that's there. But that's the information we have to date. Infringements by regions, you can see Brisbane is right up there. We are in the southeastern region. We got 3, so the 3 are from the Gold Coast. It doesn't include Logan and Scenic Rim. Enforcement by, this is infringement type by age groups. So you could see the younger ones, the younger cohorts, say up to 30 years old, are the big numbers. There are some older ones than that, and then as you get older and older,
the younger ones, everyone 50 to 59 and below.
They're the young ones.
Yes. Thank you.
It's all relative, but I'm probably close to the bottom one. So yeah, so that's the age group and that's the area. So based around that sort of thing, that's what they're targeting. They're targeting the high schools, they're targeting universities, the TikTok, the social media. The marketing people know how to handle that. So that's what Queensland Police have been doing as well. The enforcement by cities, Brisbane's there. We are getting there. So that's the number of PMD infringements they've given is so far 98. So this is till the 30th of September. So just starting to pick up. It'll be interesting to see in a year's time where we are.
Off that slide. So North and South Brisbane is 3,000.
Yes.
And it's twice our population.
Twice the population, yes.
And we're under 100.
Less, yeah, under 100, and we are 700,000. Yeah, it does. And I think the letters through the chair, I think the letters we wrote to Minister Bailey, and it's in your report, and there was a handwritten note you read that, yes, that said he would make that commitment to that. What has actually happened is he has made that commitment, and Minister Mark Ryan has also approved overtime for the Gold Coast police officers to be doing specials like they do for speed cameras and all that. So that means they're... Yeah, so that's that, but this is just data from them. It's nothing comparatively. Where we are, our next steps is to continue a citywide audit and of the pathways that are 2.5 meters wide and some consideration for centre line marking. So if there is a certain width, you can put centre lines and those sorts of symbols on that, and I think that'll work. And the first trench we are looking at doing is area north of Main Beach, is Cavill Avenue, north of that area there, which is a heavily used area, so we can probably achieve that. We're also looking at some new sites for those user-activated signs to start a rotation, like we do with our speed awareness signs. We want to apply this toolkit that we are proposing for everyday business as usual activities. Some future investigations of separated bikeways, and the first one we're looking at is the Broadwater Parklands upgrade, so that'll have that facility there. Yep.
So isn't the Broadwater Parklands already a 2.5 or 3 metre wide footpath?
It is 2.5 in a lot of it, but it's the volume. It's the volume of users.
So how would you separate?
That is the challenge which the Ocean Way team is looking at. You probably crossed that.
Through the chair, we have funded a redesign of where the jumping pillow is. It's called Washington Waters. So there's a whole rework of that parklands, playgrounds happening, and with that they're doing a separation. So they're doing a bike lane on one side and they're doing everyone else on the other side. So that's going out to public consultation within weeks.
Thank you, Councillor. So that's the...
Oh, thank you. I don't mean to interrupt your stride, but I thought the focus of this was our concern about the Ocean Way. And I'm just concerned at how long it's going to take to actually focus on the Ocean Way and get something happening there. Is there a time frame?
Through the chair, sorry, Councillor, just to understand for which component of it, the engineering component or the separation? Or
the separation. My recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we last considered this, my recollection was there was a great deal of concern from the council about the combination of fast bikes, pedestrians, elderly people, and how they were managing their activities on the Ocean Way in particular because of the volume of users. So I appreciate all of this work, but when are we going to see something on the ground that addresses our concerns?
So I think Diva's gone through some of those low interventions already. So obviously along the Ocean Way we are doing those wavy lines and all of those components. So those are the engineering assessments that we will do. In terms of a physical separation within the Ocean Way, that hasn't been contemplated at this stage. It's about using the line markings and to the earlier point, using as many of those which are as most successful as possible, with an overlay of education, and then as a last resort, the enforcement component. So I think the segregation of PMDs as a mode that people use for commuting is something that we need to put into our future road network planning. It's something that we've all spoken about. We understand there are different users of PMDs for different reasons, and we've spoken about those that are going from A to B from a work perspective who want to go high speed, and we need to separate those out and take them off places like the Ocean Way where we know it's more recreational. That's a sort of I think a different aspect to our transport strategy than actually segregating the Ocean Way as it is today. So
we don't have a list of locations and timeframes for the lines?
No, the team have been working through those in a high priority, and they've got the next ones to go. So I think they probably can get you a full list of when they're coming. Yes.
And with recommended timeframes for their installation. So will it come back to council this year, or will it? What's the time?
We are. Renee, are you in a position to?
And just through the chair, so we intend to come meet with all of you and go through your priorities for both the VAS signs, where your hotspots, where you'd like us to look at it, and then we'll also be doing a desktop audit of the pathway widths, and then we'll come to you with some locations, but they haven't been identified yet. Just on the notion of putting physical separators on the Ocean Way. Okay, all right, so just the line marking. Okay. Yeah, we'll come see you.
Yep. Good. So The last one is the education campaign, which is an ongoing, it's a three-pronged approach with education, engineering, and enforcement as well, plus with the support of the new road rules, plus more collateral and, you know, there's pop-ups that we want to do, and hopefully we do a fair bit of that next year. And then ongoing collaboration with QPS and our city laws people, so for what we can do with what we have. So that's basically the presentation. There's a recommendation there for yourselves.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I appreciate all the work that's been done, but I'm with Councillor Gates. It's been going since 2021, and yeah, there's not a lot of change, and I do appreciate that QPS has a role to play here. And I can tell you, probably a couple of months ago, when QPS put a couple of officers on their push bikes riding the Ocean Way between Snapper and North Kirra, it made a hell of a difference. And a lot of the residents came to me and told me that as well. But I do know, and I don't know if you're aware of this or whether you've had any feedback, I do know that electric skateboards, for instance, have been banned from shared pathways in northern New South Wales around the Tweed area. I don't know if you had any feedback, whether from that council, whether it's worked or whether it's something that we could look at. But it is, you know, I'm getting, just the other day I was at a function and a very high profile person who didn't say it very nicely but just said to me, don't pass the buck to the state government. You guys look after the paths, even if the legislation says such and such a speed limit, you can say whether those vehicles go on those pathways. Can we do that?
Yes, we've been in touch with Tweed at an officer-to-officer level, talking about, especially about electric skateboards and a couple of other things that are banned in New South Wales but permissible in Queensland. So currently we operate under the Queensland rules, the transport operations rules, the TORAM. If we were to ban a particular type of device, then that's a discussion we need to have and take up. That'll be a bit of a we've got to have a discussion, Renee.
Just, sorry, through the chair, yeah, via a local law amendment, so that would still have to go through the state. We can put a local law out that says electric skateboards are banned in these locations.
And we have them on bridges and those sorts of places.
Thanks. Any other questions, Councillor O'Neill? No, you're right. Done that. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you. I think that's a clarification. My understanding was that we couldn't ban certain devices on roads or unless we had a segregated path, and I think that's a clarification we're wanting to understand is what can we do in the meantime until future there is ability to segregate these type of devices on the road to manage that side.
I actually think most of the report today is talking about the things that we're actually capable of doing as a city without actually changing a local law and that, and there's a level of frustration with everybody, I'm sure, as the capacity of people using our ocean ways increases all the time.
I think for me it's really important to understand we're growing and it is an impact there and we're providing great pathways, but at some point when do we start looking, particularly through the city in the busy areas, a dedicated area that these type of devices can operate, and in my view it doesn't necessarily have to be on the Ocean Way. They can be segregated in other areas. I use, you know, Mermaid, Hedges Avenue, that you've got sections there that if we're trying to get people off the road, why can't we have designated lanes like I've seen in Melbourne, I've seen overseas, designated pathways for those?
Hedges Avenue wouldn't be one of them, considering there's no width there at all already. So I think on that side of things too, it does become a budget discussion, because it's obviously, if the team recognises that we need to deliver segregated pathways there, that it's a discussion that would have to go through budget as to the capacity of the city to actually deliver separated paths over paths in areas that are actually also asked for. I'll go to Councillor Patterson next, and then Councillor Peter Young, then Councillor Curtis. Thank you.
I've got a couple of comments which fall into questions. I do think it's really good that we happen to be doing this Broadwater Parklands upgrade that will split it after having done this data and then having a look at it again afterwards and seeing the impact. I do have a concern with what's presented here in terms of kind of the underlying expectation of people to be logical and almost act like a sensible engineer when they're taking an ocean walk. I read a very compelling town planning assessment of oceanways before the Oceanway was agreed upon, and talked about that the people it most significantly impacts is the elderly, and oceanways do not work for them. So when there are comments here where pedestrians are not taking enough attention, it's because they're looking at a beautiful beach, or they're watching their toddlers, which are also noted as a bit of an inconvenience, or their pet. This is people experiencing and living their lives. They're not things which are just difficult, and they should act far more kind of sensibly and logically. I think we're kind of on the wrong lane if we look at that. The 2 reported senior injury, serious injury crashes as well. I've gone through this data before at the Broadwater Parklands, and what isn't in here is people's experience of safety. And we expect that our elderly can have an experience of safety when they go on an ocean walk, or that when someone's got a toddler or they've got a dog. So those things are not presented in this report, and I'm kind of, I don't know what the question is because I don't see where we can move forward on that. It's effectively a logical assumption on when people are at their most illogical, when they're trying to enjoy themselves in a park or the like. So I am interested that I heard today that we do have the ability to say no to some devices or transport options, but it wasn't kind of the point of why we'd set up the Oceanway in the first place. Sorry, Chair, no question, lots of chatting, but that's where I ended up.
And I think part of any change is you've got to have the data that supports it. So I think that's what we're being delivered today, is the information to support changes going forward. Councillor Peter Young, please.
Chair, I was just going to try to bring it to a head and move a motion which is different from what's printed, but it's basically that Council notes the pathway safety study update and requests an accelerated program of attention for the Oceanway.
Second.
Thank you.
So, Peter, did you want to read that out again? And would
Council
you...
notes the pathway safety study update and requests an accelerated program of activity related to the Oceanway. Thanks. So that's accelerated. Thank you.
And you're happy to second that, Councillor Owen Jones, were you?
That's okay.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. That's quite right. You're nice and quiet. Okay. And we'll leave that up there on the board, but I'll go to Councillor, if it's all right with you, Councillor Young, Councillor Curtis, for any questions that she may have had before we actually move forward on the recommendation.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just acknowledging that I'm coming at this problem from a very different level from everyone else because I haven't had the experience of at least the last 4 years. But I found this report really helpful to ground me in what work's already been done, give me some data that I can share, and particularly the correspondence was useful so that I can share that with people that are raising concerns. But I guess this feels, the action taken so far feels like we've sort of experimented in the softer side of things, and I'm hearing a real appetite to go, okay, we've seen some work done there, but we still feel that need to accelerate it to more just harder rules that deliver some results for our residents. So I actually just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for the report, because for at my level, it was perfect and it brought me up to speed, gave me some data. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Curtis. I appreciate that, and I'm sure the officers do as well. So, Councillor Peter Young's done a change recommendation there, and we've had it seconded by Councillor Owen Jones. Is there any other questions before we take this to the vote?
Particularly regarding to the ocean.
Yeah, Councillor O'Neill.
Just from my experience, and I've got a lot of Ocean Way in my division, I feel that the pavement treatments are your best option, honestly, because there's so much other signage around that I think confusing. Too much signage is no one reads it, but pavement treatments, I think, in my opinion, are absolutely the best way to go. And I'd like to see them, a lot more of those in my area. Thank you.
And I would agree with you, Councillor O'Neill, in my area as well. The pavement treatments have been the thing that's had the biggest response and the biggest comment back through my office and from every demographic going through. So I think it's
So that pavement treatment, does that include the pavement on the missing section of the Ocean Way?
One word, double.
I'd really like to see that.
Yeah.
Is that the accelerated program we're talking about, Peter?
Yeah. I haven't spoken to my motion yet.
Oh, sorry.
all right. Now I'm going to go to Councillor Peter Young to speak to his motion, and then we'll go to the
I
vote.
appreciate that the officers have done quite a comprehensive amount of work here, and they've applied some of the treatments already, and there's been mixed level of success, and a lot of that is because we're relying upon enforcement, which is not really our domain. And I appreciate that the officers are casting a broader net to look at other opportunities to implement these safety outcomes. Personally, I don't have any pathways that probably would be within that program of works, and I appreciate that that's a great approach to have, to look at things citywide. But Councillor Gates is correct. The original motivation and keen interest from councillors was about the Ocean Way, and it's a vitally important piece of infrastructure that we get right and protect the users of it, so we don't have reputational damage as well as real damage to people. So that's why the motion just seeks that the officers direct their attention in particular to the Ocean Way and the outcomes that can be achieved there.
Thank you, Councillor Young. If there's nothing else there, we'll take that to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
All in favour of the Ocean Way.
Yeah,
That's where we should. That's where we should be spending our money.
Yeah.
Paul? I mean, not Paul, sorry. Darren?
Oh, yeah. Who are you?
Councillors, we'll move on now to 6.2, which is our traffic calming assessment procedure and toolkit. Did we have some questions there?
Catherine is coming in. So similar to the previous report, this is a follow-on to some work that we have done. We used to have, I believe, a traffic calming policy. What we've said is actually we don't need a policy, we actually need a procedure and a toolkit. And we have spoken a little bit about this before. So we'll go through it pretty quickly, see if anyone's got any questions. I think most councillors have had a briefing on this beforehand. And then we've got some presents, I think, as well. Yes, we do.
I'll be presenting the traffic calming assessment procedure and toolkit. I'm doing this one. That one? All right, so first I'll start with a bit of the background to the project. So just give a context to the creation of the traffic calming assessment procedure and toolkit. So the journey of this project begins in 1996 with the creation of the traffic calming devices policy. So with the creation of that policy, there has actually been no proper, full review of the policy in the past 27 years. So in that time, what we've been doing is doing administrative changes to align with the current standards and guidelines. So keeping that up to date as we move through. So given that amount of time, the 27 years since it was created, what we've done is put an action into the road safety plan to undertake a review of the city's current traffic calming devices policy to ensure it aligns with current best practice for the local area traffic management schemes. So that's where that.
Sorry, wasn't the policy being retired?
We're getting to that. I'm telling the story of how we get there. So, in review of the policy, we started with, the first step was to review undertake a benchmarking study to get an understanding of where we sit relevant to other local governments. So see what they're doing in the industry, what's industry best practice, comparing us to them. So we did a study of 17 local governments, international, national, other states, Southeast Queensland, all that sort of stuff. So that's all the ones on the map there. What we found was that a contemporary approach and the emerging trends in the traffic calming and LATM area is forward-facing communication materials with the local residents. So that's where that's coming out, and a clear assessment procedure. So with that, the conclusion of the review, we found that while the traffic calming devices policy was generally fit for purpose, it really didn't provide anything extra to what's in the current standards, guidelines, and those prescribed measures in the legislation that we have to adhere to anyway. So it was determined that an assessment procedure, communication material, that would all improve the customer experience and would be more suitable than the existing policy. So as such, it was then recommended to retire the current policy, which subsequently went through council last month. That's where we're up to. All right, before I go into the toolkit and assessment procedure itself, I'll just run through a bit of the technical side to get us all on the same page, same terminology when we're discussing this. So as you can see up here, the traffic calming devices are the treatments themselves. So when we talk about that, we're talking about an individual device, like a road hump or a SAD sign or something like that. Whereas the LATM, the local area traffic management, is what we refer to as the whole scheme. So multiple devices together in a row. They could be the same device or different devices just within a scheme. So those traffic calming devices, they're designed to look at reducing speeds rather than hooning. So hooning is more your deliberate, dangerous choices, the groups of cars getting together, going out and racing and that type of thing, where we're looking at vehicles travelling over the speed limit. So then these devices are more for your local streets. That's the context of where this engineering treatment it suits, rather than your busy traffic carrying roads, so your big connector roads through your divisions. So, the Traffic Calming Devices Toolkit. So this has been created as a communication guide for the councillors, yourselves. It allows you to relay information accurately and confidently when you're discussing speeding and rat running and those types of concerns with your constituents. So making sure everyone's talking the same language when we're discussing that. So, an overview of, let's go. With what's in the toolkit, I'll just talk to that. So basically, previous slide. The information, basically, where they're permitted on the roads, movement and place functions of the road. So just some useful definitions at the start there, roles and responsibilities, that's where your QPS versus us, that type of stuff comes in, the assessment procedure, and then frequently asked questions. So all of those topics have been included in the toolkit. So when we talk about the toolkit and the individual devices themselves, so there's 14 traffic calming devices in there. They're all approved for use in Queensland. We've obviously left out the ones that we aren't approved for Queensland. So what you'll see here on the slide here is an example of the type of content that's going to be in the toolkit. So it's not necessarily going to look like this, but that's just the type of information that's there. So the type of photos, that sort of thing. So we've got a description, photos, the possible positive impacts as well as the possible challenges with installation. That's trying to get everyone on the same page. So we're all talking, you see both sides of the coin. as well as eligibility criteria, because some devices just aren't suitable for certain areas, or we have restrictions within the legislation of where we can put those. And then finally, your key messages. So that's helping your messaging when you're discussing and that sort of stuff. We have been working with our communications team, basically to help make the engineering information more palatable, get it a bit more down to so you guys can discuss it with the general community rather than using our crazy jargon that no one seems to like or understand. That's just the engineers and us, we can't help it. So we've got our communication teams helping us with that. The important part of that is on that engineering side is the toolkit doesn't replace any engineering judgment. It's more about an information and communication guide to help understand where those engineering assessments and judgments are coming from. So it's bridging that gap between us and you guys and your constituents. So the assessment procedure, that's also included in the toolkit. It just gives a...
Stop you? Just, yeah, wait to the end. Yeah,
sorry.
Keep going ahead.
So the assessment procedure. So this is a step-by-step guide on what happens when a request is raised for traffic calming or an LATM scheme or concerns about speeding, rat running, that type of thing. So it goes through from the start when there's a request through to where a scheme might be installed. So it just gives those touch points for correspondence for the residents so they can see when they're going to get a response back, when you that sort of thing, and all the engineering and all the process that's going on in the background for that. Alrighty, next steps. So once the toolkit is endorsed by council, it will be made available on the intranet for councillors and other city officers. So that's an example up on the top here for what it might look like. We've had a little mock-up done, so that's still in development. And then there will also be information that will go out to the public as well. So through the city's website, which is, we've got down here an example of our traffic management website that's on the city page now. So we'll include it in there, maybe some social media, advertisements, YouTube, all that sort of normal communication stuff. And then we'll be routinely updating the toolkit to align with current standards and guidelines. So if they change, we'll add in a device, or we might need to take one away, just updating it as those things change. So the recommendations, they're up there for you to see. They're also in the report. Council notes the finding of the report and that Council endorses the creation of assessment procedure and then traffic calming devices toolkit. So I've got up here some examples of our stickers. I do have samples of those ready for you guys when we finish. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, yeah, I've got just one question first because I've got Councillor Gates and Councillor Peter Young. Councillor Curtis, just to you, and I think your comment on the last feedback was good from somebody who hasn't been doing this for 4 years plus. So I'd just like to, if through your eyes, get an interpretation of how you felt this read, considering you're not having been considered these things for the last however many years.
Thank you, Chair. And it's the same again. I can't speak to whether it's fit for purpose because I haven't been in the seat long enough, but it was so great to have these at hand, and I imagine that it'll really come to pass in March or beyond March when you've got new people in seats, that they have this start point instead of just trying to rely on like what my previous experience as purely a resident was. So I'm really, really appreciative of these types of documents when you're first stepping into this seat. So thank you, whoever initiated them in the first place. I've particularly found them valuable.
And I appreciate your feedback on that too, because I think the toolkits are not being designed for the people in this room, but actually being designed for the public to have a better understanding and perhaps not have us repeating frequent councillor requests for the same issue over and over again. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gates, who was patient enough. Thank you. And then Councillor Peter Young.
Well, thank you. My question's basically been answered because initially it was indicated to me that this wasn't a forward-facing document, that it was a document primarily for councillors' use. and I was not happy with it, to be perfectly honest. I felt that it was way too wordy, and for a councillor, if you get a request for traffic calming devices, we're never going to refer to this and give the answer. We're going to send through a request asking the experienced engineers for their best advice. And so I have no idea why we would produce a document like this that highlights all the challenges and that isn't succinct in terms of the messaging. So when I met with the officers for a briefing, they were going to take it to corporate comms and to get some advice, and I'm sure that from the presentation that's happened, but nothing's changed. And it's still an incredibly wordy document that I challenge any one of us to have read in advance of this meeting, because it's just so much information. And whilst I respect it might have been great for someone who's not had any experience previously, and that may include the public, when we retired the policy, my understanding was that it wasn't primarily a document for the public, and yet today it seems it is. So I just need some clarity around what it's hoped to achieve by having all of the challenges listed. And, you know, in some instances it seems like it's been written for school children to me, without meaning to be rude to whoever wrote it. So I don't understand the extent of this and why we didn't just keep the policy if we're going to this level of communication.
Through the chair, I'll take that one. So from a customer perspective, we actually don't have a huge amount of information at the moment on our website. And I think last time we were here, we spoke about the fact that sometimes our engineers write for engineers, and we wanted to make sure there was information for people to understand, very similar to the work we've done with yellow lines. You know, everyone wants a yellow line outside their house, and there are certain situations. So the intent is to be front-facing. The policy review was ultimately about whether we needed to have a city policy. We have legislative requirements, but to Catherine's earlier point, actually educating the community was one of the best practice things that came out when we did that policy review. So the intent is to write for quite young. We know that from a website review that our customer reading age is normally around year 8 or 9. And to Councillor Gates's point, we are working with the corporate comms team to make sure any material we have is succinct, relevant and easy to consume. Certainly from our perspective, people don't understand that when you put a traffic calming device in, it can have pros and cons. So for example, speed humps can make it very noisy. So people need to understand the benefits and the potential offsets if they have those kind of things. So the intent is certainly to obviously not replace the procedure or the engineering assessment, but to have something else that we can provide to the community. So if they Google, you know, speed hump in my street or something on the Gold Coast, that there is information available to them and we can use in marketing and campaigns. It's it's only a component of our road safety plan.
Okay, I just have one other question, because I didn't read it all because I just didn't have time. But is there still going to be required consensus from, like if a street, you get a petition for traffic calming or even simply a request. Previously, it was necessary before council expended hundreds of thousands of dollars implementing calming devices, it was necessary for the residents who signed to agree to a device being put at the front of their property, because so often they want it, but they don't want it outside their home because it takes up a parking space or it causes an inconvenience or whatever. But is that going to still be necessary?
Yeah, through the chair. So that's our recommendation for the reasons that you've stated. What this toolkit is about is giving other options that you might like to use. So particularly the councillors have been around for a long time, understand some of the issues we have with the installation of these treatments. Some councillors have actually put them in and had them removed due to community angst. So the idea of the toolkit is, okay, so we've got this problem, we've got an upset resident. What are some of the other softer measures, like the bin stickers or the speed awareness devices, that we could use to help that community education around speed?
But this undertakes the investigation first, which is costly in terms of officer time, and you may undertake the investigation and then people will say, well, I don't want it outside my home, so it's in the wrong order. They need to agree before the investigation that they will take the engineer's advice about where a device might be located. Otherwise, we expend all that time and effort investigating something that may never get past first base. So, I mean, that's my view. I'm not on this committee, but I just put that out there for consideration. Previously, it's been required to have that level of confidence that we could proceed and that the devices could be installed where the engineers considered them most appropriate before undertaking the investigation and telling people where the devices were planned for.
Through the chair, I don't think our intention is actually to change that part of the process. That's the engineering assessment component. This was kind of before that point as part of a toolkit.
Well, it says following the more detailed investigation, community consultation will be undertaken.
Yep.
Does that not mean more detailed investigation by the officers of the potential to deliver devices?
Yes.
So I just think it's in the wrong order.
Thank you. Just on that point, I would contend that there's got to be a reasonable degree of evaluation so you know what kind of device can be put in. Then you go to the public and say, well, we can do a hump or we can do something else, and gauge the response, and then the further investment in the design would follow that. So it's just a matter of making sure that that is not overloaded at the front. I'm just looking at that process, which is on page 86 of our agenda. There are 2 Step 9s, which may attract some interest from the committee. And I noticed that in the second Step 9, it says, once budgeted, the project will be designed and programmed for delivery and the LATM scheme will be constructed. The first Step 9. The LATM scheme will then be subject to the City's annual budgetary process. Presumably these things would also be funded through Councillors' Divisional Works. So this seems to imply that we can only look at it at next year's budget. You know, we'll evaluate it now, we'll look at it next year's city budget, and then there'll be funds that might flow from that. So maybe that just needs a little bit of an adjustment to reflect that it might also be funded out of the ongoing Divisional Works program. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Peter. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I see this slightly different. There's going to be new councillors early next year, I would presume, so I suppose it's going to be a handled tool for them. I don't see this as taking the officer's job away. What I find, it gives us a body of work that actually explains why we look one way or the other in relation to different solutions. And I've seen so many different requests and so many different solutions, but we've never had a tool to actually give the pros and cons, and sometimes when you actually give the pros and cons, the residents do understand it as well. So I think that does help in this space moving forward. I don't see it as taking the role away from the officers. Obviously, their recommendations there, but hopefully it supports us and the community to understand why we get there one way or the other.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. I'll go to you, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I do share some concerns around this. With the steps on page 86 again, I feel like there should be, after step 3, maybe like a flow chart in 2 ways, because what you've said is you'll receive a response detailing the outcome of the investigation. Well, I've just gone through this process again with the street. When we raised the CR, it used to be in Councillor Castra's area, and he had shared with me earlier that they'd put devices in, they'd taken them out. So I made a note when I put through the CR. I think there's a history with this place. I think we've done this before. Can you make sure the history's in there? I get a response, no history, starting from scratch, and with no, when you say you will receive a response detailing the outcome, it's more this response that I'm sitting on it because I don't want to give it to residents. I think I have to go out there and speak to them myself because it doesn't communicate anything to them. It just says, no, it's unfortunate that you've got hundreds more people coming your way every night, but that's to be expected. And then, no, we're not going to do anything about it. That, to me, isn't useful. And in fact, if we give them access to all of this and all these options, and then I give them a 2-sentence letter that says, no thanks, doesn't suit for your area, that's really unhelpful to me. So what would be more useful is if we, I suppose, do more work when it's a no. There was no alternative. There was no, okay, maybe stickers, maybe this, maybe that. No, there's just a no. So there's something that's in here, and there's a very different experience when I'm getting a response from a CR.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Any other questions or comments? If there's no appetite out there to change anything, then I'm going to put the recommendation to the vote.
Sorry, Chair, I don't have a different recommendation to present, but I can't endorse that today for the reasons that I've shared and also for the reason that Councillor Gates has shared. So I don't know, I don't have an alternative option, but I'm left not actually able to support it because I think cause more troubles than good.
Okay, moved by Councillor Peter Young, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Councillors, all those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, councillors, item 6.3, our coastal future strategic direction for management. And thank you, officers.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Just before we leave, I think we've got some sample stickers to hand out as well. If you want to hand them out while they come in.
Yes. Yeah, bring them out on the table there, Renee, and then
we'll pop them out on the table. It's just some of the sample of the stickers for everybody. Okay, so coming in for our last report today is Liam, who is our acting coordinator, stormwater, beaches and waterways for today. So pretty exciting report, I think, to finish on actually. So we spoke to you previously about the acquittal essentially of our previous beaches strategy, which was a very successful strategy on how we looked after our beaches, which is one of obviously our key assets here in the city. We noted that we wanted to come back and talk to you about what does the next 10 years potentially look like. And so today the team are here to talk to you all about what potentially may be our coastal future for the Gold Coast.
Thanks, Kath. So as Kath mentioned, the city's Ocean Beaches strategy has reached the end of its life, 2023, by the fact that it is 2023. And as Kath mentioned, Council endorsed the end-of-life review and for an approach to strategic coastal planning beyond the OBS to be returned to Council for consideration, and that's what we're doing now. In addition to that, there is significant interest from our community and stakeholders on what is happening after the OBS. And there's a number of risks and opportunities with respect to our coastal environment that have been identified and need to be clearly articulated in the strategy post-2023. So, as we presented at the OBS end-of-life review, an environmental scan was undertaken with regards to coastal management, and a number of risks have been identified. There's a lot more detail in the report and the attachments, but we've just provided a high-level overview at this point. So climate pressures. Our coastal spaces are frontline to climate impacts, increasing erosion pressures. Gradual or sudden impacts present a risk to our lifestyle, reputation and economy. The usage of our coastal spaces is increasing. So we've had 34 million beach visits this year, which is doubled in the past 7 years. Evolution, the usage of these spaces has changed rapidly. We've got new uses popping up all the time. The number of events and organised activities in these spaces is increasing rapidly. And with that, there's a potential for conflict and a diminished user experience, which presents a risk to our lifestyle, reputation and economy. And integration. So our beaches, waterways and foreshores are all coastal places with varying uses, stakeholders and partners, and separation of these risks conflict, diminished lifestyle, reputation and economy. But with those risks, there is opportunity for the city to really secure its place as a centre of excellence in this space going forward. So as I mentioned, by increasing climate resilience, not only safeguards our assets, but can also secure the city's place as a desirable place to live. With regards to the increasing usage, by implementing management strategies that maximise space and utilisation, the city can ensure these spaces are leveraged to support our lifestyle and economy. Evolution and growth, by embracing the new uses that are coming to the city in a sustainable way, we can drive job creation, economic diversification and overall growth. And integration and alignment, a new strategy would position the city to engage with users, stakeholders and partners to ensure the management of its coastal spaces are complementary and achieve council plan outcomes. So what are we proposing? So we're proposing a new strategy post-2023, which would provide a pathway for all partners involved in coastal management to achieve council plan objectives. So that includes inside of council and outside of council. The management of our coastal spaces cuts across so many service providers inside and outside of council. Provide investment to respond to the risks and leverage opportunities that I just mentioned in line with council plan objectives. Provide investment for assets which are currently not capitalised or currently captured in the city's financial model. So beaches and waterways are currently not capitalised, and many of those risks are not captured in the city's financial model for the next 10 years. And expanded, so the current Ocean Beaches strategy was really focused on beaches alone, and the proposal is to expand that to cover our entire network of coastal spaces, so including beaches, foreshores, waterways and lakes, and the entire experience of these places. So the treatment that the beaches has had and the learnings that we've had from the Ocean Beaches strategy over the past 10 years, we can bring them to the rivers, the creeks, the lakes that are inland as well. So bring that experience and that excellence that the city provides on the beach, we can bring that inland to other places. So how does this fit in the city's internal policy context? So we have the council plan 2022 to 2027, which has been endorsed by council. The new coastal strategy would provide detail below that, which provides the detail required for these coastal places, beaches, waterways, lakes and foreshores to achieve the council plan objectives. And below that, we have a number of plans and projects that will come out of the strategy. So, and that's what part of the reason why a new coastal strategy is required, is just the myriad of plans and policies that are related to the coastal space. So we've got the surf management plan, we've got the shoreline management plan, coastal adaptation plan, there's parks usage for community benefit policy, asset management plan, service management plans. So we've got all of these different existing policies and plans, and the new coastal strategy would provide an overarching detail and strategic measures and outcomes of success to achieve the council plan. And in addition to that, there'll be a number of projects that will come out of it. What that would allow us to do, we'll engage effectively with our community, key stakeholders and key partners. Without a key policy document, there's really nothing that we can put in front of our key partners in our community and say, this is what we're doing with regards to our coastal spaces, so our beaches, our foreshores, our waterways and our lakes. So what is the scope? So as I mentioned, management of these spaces cuts across every element of council and our community. So from things like responding to climate pressures, sports and recreation, amenity and place-based planning, we have universal access and DDA compliance. There's obviously environmental management and asset management associated with this space, economic development, the way that you get to the beach. Can you get a car park at the beach? Can you find out what beach is most busy or least busy at any point in time? These are all the different elements that and I keep referring to beaches, but this is for a broader purpose, as I mentioned, and will look to include things such as beaches, foreshore parks, waterways, canals and lakes. And probably a distinction that needs to be made is the fact that GCWA does have jurisdiction over our waterways, particularly below the highest astronomical tide. So that would be any projects in that space would need to be funded appropriately. So that's essentially the proposed scope of a new coastal strategy. So what we've done initially is like the new format for our strategies includes themes. We've had a go at developing themes aligned, which officers have interpreted the council plan as being required to achieve the objectives of the council plan. And initially, 3 focuses have been identified. So amenity improvements and in-place strategy. So this would look to address safety risks associated with user conflicts, DDA and accessibility constraints, and enhance coastal recreational environmental value. Coastal resilience, so measures that look to shore up our coastal lifestyle in response to coastal hazards. So this includes things like responding to coastal hazards such as erosion and flooding. And economic growth, so this would include measures to attract industry and tourism to the Gold Coast to continue to stimulate our economy and would diversify our tourism offering and mitigate our risk should any impacts to our beaches and coastal spaces be realised. So that's about diversifying our tourism experience from just being or heavily focused on our beaches to also include those other natural spaces, our inland waterways and our lakes as well. How would that be developed? So we're proposing to develop the new strategy in 4 stages. So first stage coming to a head today in that we've completed the OBS end of life review, taken the proposal to executive leadership team and presenting the proposed way forward today at TIC. If we were to achieve endorsement, we go through an engagement and co-design process. So that would be internal and obviously external engagement as well. And that will be undertaken over the next 2 quarters with investment schedule and marketing communications material to be developed by the end of this financial year, with the proposal to come back with a new strategy in the early next financial year. So to allow us to continue on this path, it is recommended that Council resolves as follows, that Council endorse the development of a new city strategy which aligns to Council Plan 2022 to 2027 to transform our coastal spaces beyond 2024. That Council notes that the city strategy will be brought back to Council for consideration in 24-25, and that Council notes that city officers will present a 10-year financial forecast regarding coastal management activities, identifying potential projects as part of the financial year 2024-25 special budget process.
Thanks very much, Liam. Really good report. Gets all the facts out there, short and succinct, so thank you, and Scott as well. And I'm just going to make one comment. I've been on the Royal Surf Reserve for 7.5 years now, and in the last, since you two took over or were appointed into those positions, just such a growth in basically the stakeholders who are coming on board, the feedback that we're getting and the improvement in the strategy right across the council with all your reports and that. So, and that's feedback from a lot of people out there who attend our meetings. So I just want to take that opportunity to express my thanks. I'll go to Councillor Peter Young first.
Yeah, and certainly endorse your position. I note that this item is called our Coastal Future Strategic Direction for Management of our Beaches, Foreshores, Lakes and Waterways, and there's been repeated reference to waterways in your presentation, Liam, through you, Chair, but I don't see it in the document. I don't see that focus on waterways like rivers, creeks and so forth here, and what I did see is an exclusion, a policy gap mentioned on page 117, which talks about a waterways network plan and waterways resilience plan sits as an action under the Gold Coast Water Strategy expiring in 2024. So that's an element of work that's not been done. So I'm just wondering what my expectations would be about waterways in this plan, please.
So the expectations would be that we have a consistent approach to strategic planning across waterways, beaches, foreshore lakes. So we'd be looking to achieve the objectives that would ultimately be achieved would be applied across all. So if we're talking about things like resilience for our beaches, so things like artificial reefs and nourishment, those kinds of activities, the same type of resilience type activities would be, and the same approach to planning for resilience would be undertaken for our waterways. And I think like the mission of waterways is certainly some good feedback, but it comes from the fact that we have only had an ocean beaches strategy for the past 10 years, and we've had so much knowledge developed in that space through that strategy, and it's exactly the reason why we are proposing to include that asset type and that critical part of our lifestyle in a strategy.
Well, I'd just like to reinforce that. I think that's absolutely critical. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Young. Was there any other questions, councillors? Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair, and great report, Liam and Scott, really good. So the Ocean Beach strategy stays in play until the end of the financial year?
So the Ocean Beaches team, so the Ocean Beaches strategy has completed.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are business as usual. So the service, the asset management, those are business as usual. The team are still here. They are, as part of their normal roles, which are already funded, they will be able to start the work to actually start the new strategy. So the items and activities that are underway will continue. We will continue. There's a steering committee internally, and that has external partners on as well, which was created for the original Ocean Beaches strategy. We will transition that in and change the membership so that we can sort of seamlessly go essentially from one straight into developing the second strategy.
So the timeline that you've put in the report here is we can't shorten that that it has to take that period of time before it comes back to council to be endorsed.
I think it's probably, I'm going to go to Liam, they've had a good estimate. We've got to obviously do consultation and so forth. So I think that's probably some of those reasons why we put it that amount of time.
Yeah, through the Chair, absolutely. It comes back to the fact that we want to do really proper engagement around this, and we don't want to rush that. So, to achieve engagement and develop projects and investment schedule, it's a significant body of work. But absolutely, we'll be pushing as hard as we can. One of the reasons why we've brought this report back so quickly, I think we only brought the OBS end of life review in. Might have been early September, it's only been 6 weeks, is just so that we can signal to the community that there is a plan
Something
for beyond
coming,
the OBS.
yeah.
So
and I think that's really important too, because there'll be a lot of stakeholders that'll be wondering what's happening in that space.
Yeah, through the Chair, and those are the stakeholders we'll be looking to engage with so that they know that it's coming.
Great, thanks,
Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. I appreciate that. So if there's no other questions, councillors, I'll put that. We've got a recommendation up there on the screen, and moved by Councillor Peter Young, seconded by Councillor Darren Taylor. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. If there's no other, is there any general business at all? No. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Kath as Director of T&I for the past 14 months. 14 months. Today's is the 31st, so it's the last day before the inception of all the new, departments coming forward. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank Kath for all the work, and also for, the officers who are leaving the room, but every other officer that's contributed towards T&I's information and everything during that period of time, during this transition period, and good luck with your new position. And I'll go to Councillor Gates.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo that through you, Chair, to Kath, because she's done exceptionally well, and I can't help but be in awe of the way she picked up the challenge of this role when it was so totally different from her previous role. And I just want to say that I've had incredible feedback from the staff who've worked under Kath about their enjoyment working under you as a director. So congratulations and best wishes for the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks.
So I was just going to sure that we clap so that Nikki wasn't the only one that got away with a clap today, all right? So, but thank you, Kath, you've been awesome. So,
Thank you.
I'm sure you go and are working with Paul Callender next.
I am working with Paul. You will see me. I am obviously looking after performance, so the council plan, the quarterly reports. You'll see a little bit of me through that.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah, in the minutes. Oh, can we have a seconder for that vote of thanks to Kath? Yes, Councillor Owen. I'm going, yeah.
No, go with Councillor Petty Young, make it a young.
Count Young and Young. Yeah, yeah.
Councillor Young.
Vote of thanks to Drinkwater and the Transport Infrastructure team. Yeah. All the, and that was Young and Young. All those in favour? Yes, that's carried. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, yes, you do. You can vote it.
Councillor Gates is wanting confirmation of what the new title is because she thinks I'm just taking the piss.
So my new title is General Manager, Engineering Design and Standards, and then
Yes, congratulations. Yes. Yeah.
Don't forget the other 13 divisions.
Oh, and good luck to good luck to Mitch Brado for the next 3 months. 3 months. Yeah.
That Jeremy's been doing in a very fun
Yeah.
He's only not working like it. We had to tell him, Cedar Creek, it's not us.
Yeah. So, and we need to all be kind to Mitch. Yes, and very supportive of Mitch, who's going to step up for 3 months.